This week's episode of The Grid is sponsored by MPix. Shoot today, upload tonight, we ship tomorrow. Manfrotto, imagine more. On One Software, software that gets you back to shooting. ADORAMA, more than a camera store. Tiffin, helping create the world's greatest images. Peach Pit Press, publishers of technology books, ebooks, and videos for creative people. Epson, exceed your vision. Expo Imaging, Rogue Flash Benders for speedlight enthusiasts. Nik Software, photography first. And B&H Photo, the professional source.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Grid, our weekly free talk show. My name is Matt Kloskowski, and this week I am joined here in the studio by Mr. Pete Collins.
How's it going, Matt? Glad to have you back.
I know, man. It's was I not here?
You were not here last week, so RC and I.
Where was I?
Who knows? Goofing off somewhere.
Oh, Orlando. I was in Orlando. I was
Yep.
teaching my Lightroom seminar in Orlando. Great crowd, by the way. So anybody watching from Orlando, thank you. You guys rocked. RC's out on the road.
He's in Minneapolis today.
He's in Minneapolis today. He's teaching the Photoshop CS6 for Photographers tour. And I think he's going to be in Chicago on Friday.
Yep.
And Scott's actually out at, it's pretty cool. Peter Reed Miller, who's a famous sports photographer, he's giving a workshop up in Atlanta. And Scott's actually he's like a student for the day. You know, he couldn't go the workshop is all week. He couldn't go all week, but he did get up there for a day or two and was able to actually catch part of the workshop. So
yeah,
kind of jealous.
Right after he came back from Paris, he jumped right on up there.
Yeah, he was home for like a day and was back on a plane. So
I was giving you that segue. Right after he got back from Paris.
Oh, that was a good segue. Speaking of Paris, and speaking of Scott, Scott is doing on Monday. He's going to do it's back when he went to Cuba. He came back and he did a webcast called Connecting with Cuba. Really, really popular. Great. Went over great. He's going to do something similar on Monday. So I think I forget the name of it. Let me see if it's written on here. Nope, Paris Webcast on Monday. I'm pretty sure it's going to have a cooler name than Paris Webcast on Monday. But what is it called? Something like, I don't know, Photographing Paris. It's cool, though. So I was at lunch with him yesterday, and he's got a lot of really cool, just kind of concepts and things to share with people about traveling and photography in general. So make sure you check that out.
That's Monday at 7 o'clock?
Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern time. And if you're not on the Eastern time zone, then there are websites that will help you figure out what time zone you are on and what time it will be for you. Because somebody will write in and say, why don't you put...
I think Greenwich Mean Time is 5 hours different than here.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
What else we got? MPix. Our friends at MPix have something pretty cool.
Funky new stuff. What they got there, Matt? You like how I said that? like I even know, like I even care.
Funky new stuff. No, our friends at MPix, which are one of the sponsors for the show, they have a brand new app out today. So you'll definitely want to check it out. You can download it. You can send prints right from your phone. So you want to know what I like the most about the app? Is because I'm always telling people, print your cell phone photos. Don't bring them on your computer. Don't look at your cell phone photos like a photographer would look at. I got to edit these. We all use our cell phone. It's basically our point and shoot camera, right? So there's so many family memories on here that if this happens to get lost and you haven't backed it up, there goes all those family memories. So I'm always telling people, print your cell phone photos out once a month. I mean, how many could you take and how much does it cost to print a 4x6 or something like that? So print them out once a month. And that's what I think is pretty cool about the app, because
that's a great idea. I hadn't even thought about that, but that is great.
Yeah, I mean, if you have 50 photos and it costs 20 cents, I mean, you're talking $10 to have actual prints. So
yeah, that's a great idea.
Pretty cool stuff.
And speaking of a great idea, we need to say hey over to the wonderful French ambassadoress of love. How's it going?
I'm glad you can say that.
It's going good.
What was that?
I don't know,
Cat scratch fever.
It's going very well. Actually, I got a couple questions. Is the Monday webcast going to be on the Worldwide Photo Walk site? webcast?
Probably not. It'll probably be
KELBY
on
on air?
KELBYTV.com, or tell that person to keep watching whatever they found out about today's show on, and I'm sure we will let the entire world know.
I will definitely push it out.
By
on social
Monday,
media.
he'll be tired of asking, or she'll be tired of asking, or of hearing about where this webcast is.
Okay, no problem.
And Nance, this is just for you. Oh, wait.
Oh, that's so sad.
Hold on.
I love that.
Oh, we're going through the repertoire now.
Yeah, we have to, dude. Monkeys, ready? Monkey. Monkey crickets. All right, I'll stop. So.
And they accuse me of getting distracted.
I know. All right, so hey, we got a really cool topic today. Pete came in this morning, and we sat in my office, and we were kind of tossing around ideas for today's show. And I think we have a really neat topic, which is 5 common photo editing mistakes, and are you making them? So, I think you'll be interested to see what some of them are, and to see whether or not you're making. But we're not just going to show you what they are. We actually kind of have fixes for these things too.
Hopefully, we got fixes for it.
Yeah, to show you guys the right way along that. We're going to take a very quick break, so we'll be back here in just 2 minutes, and we'll jump right into the topic. See you back here.
For more than 25 years, PeachPit has been home to the world's best authors and continues to publish the best books, ebooks, videos, and apps. Whether you're an aspiring or established photographer, PeachPit is here to help you learn new techniques and inspire your creativity. PeachPit, the future looks creative.
Bad weather strikes and threatens your next outdoor shoot, you need the experience. The experience of a photographer that can handle any situation.
Get your hair out of your eyes! Come on!
The experience of Joe McNally.
Bad weather doesn't mean you can turn in a bad shoot. It's really bad weather out here, Harry! I'm not gonna leave this dock without a picture.
Trust Joe to teach you the tips you'll need to capture stunning photos even when the weather turns ugly.
Anybody there see the sun? I don't.
Don't let bad weather ruin your next...
I'm happy again. What am I supposed to out here? Sing a chorus of I Feel Pretty?
Don't let bad weather ruin your next photo shoot.
Telling people what is perfectly obvious, that the weather sucks!
Rely on Joe McNally to help you weather the storm.
The miracle of photography visits us again. We are...
Learn how to take great photos in bad weather. Watch Joe McNally.
Whoa, was that the same cow?
Hey everybody, we are back live on the grid. Matt Kloskowski here with Pete Collins.
Yep.
And let's jump right into our topic of the day. So, 5 common editing mistakes, and are you making them? And even some ways to fix them.
Well, and we've seen, as y'all have done a lot of the photo critiques, certain things kind of come up over and over again. And so, you know, we've kind of kept a running list in our head. Why does this oh, this keeps popping up, this keeps popping up. And so hopefully we can help you to become a better self-editor of what's going on.
Yeah, and so I should kind of give a little bit of tiny backstory to where the topic came from. So part of it was the photo critiques. That I actually thought about that after, because I got an email from somebody the other day. I did a video, and in that video, I think I sharpened something, and I kind of cranked the slider up. I was like, whoa, 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 that's way too much, you know, and I had to pull it back. And so somebody wrote a comment after and was asking about how do you go about that process of knowing it's too much? And I think they were even saying, you know, when I said, whoa, 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 that's way too much, they were saying they didn't think it was too much, or they didn't know that it was too much, and they wouldn't know what to look for. And then I started thinking, you know, you ever hear the saying, you don't know what you don't know? Right. And it kind of fits there, you know. It's you know, if you're just getting into this, sometimes you don't really have that eye for those things. And I have some. I'll wait till we get through all 5 things, because I have some advice at the end to this person and to anybody who would ask that, of how do you start to learn this stuff? You know, other than having us show you each time, how do you start to figure this stuff out? But
well, and I think a lot of people want us to give them that magic number, and the problem is, there's never going to be that magic number.
We can get you close. Yep. But you're going to have to at some point realize, I have to figure out what too much sharpening is. Or in this case, let's pull up our first example. So the first of the 5-ish things that we'll talk about here is, you'll see it on the computer screen in just a moment here. Ready, set. Oh. Skin smoothing. Yes. It is the porcelain doll effect, okay? And we see this one quite a bit, where you've learned a technique to smooth the skin, but then you take that like to that level that it looks scary. It looks almost like a ghost. It looks like a porcelain doll. Porcelain is what we refer to it a lot.
Well, and it's somebody who's understanding, wow, I can change this and I can make this look better. Yeah. But then doesn't realize that
I can pull back a little bit too.
You can pull back from what you've learned, because the secret is not to get rid of all the blemishes. The secret is to lower them down where they're not that noticeable, but it still looks real.
Okay, so let's take a look at this example here, and you can see this is the bad skin smoothing. So this is the before. I'm going to turn the layer off. Okay, so that's before, that's after. And I don't even have this layer. I'll crank it up to 100%, and there you go. Now it's really like weird. It's like just eyes floating out there. So here's the technique. I'll show you. I'm going to duplicate the layer, Command or Control J. We come up here to the filter menu. We go to blur. We go to Gaussian blur. And you apply. I always tell people, apply enough blur. You still want to see the details. You don't want it to look like that, but you don't want it to look like that. You want to blur out as much as you can while still being able to tell that it's a face. And then you click OK. Now, that's obviously bad. So the next step is you add a layer mask to it, and then you take your brush tool, you set your foreground color to whatever the opposite of the layer mask is. So in this case, it would be black. And then what I would do is I just paint. I paint away everything that I want to be sharp. If you want an easier way to do it, just go to that layer mask and fill it with black instead. And it's so much easier to go here with the brush, and now you just paint the softness, the blur, back in. Okay? And that's exactly what I did up here as I painted the blur back in. Now, where did I go wrong, Pete?
You left it at 100%.
Yes. So let's zoom in a little bit here, and you can, oh gosh.
Yeah, it gets worse as you zoom in.
It's hard to look at. So if you look at the opacity setting, I left it at 100%. So you're still getting the full blur effect. So what you want to do is you want to reduce this. The way that I do it is I actually bring it down to 0, and then I just build it up. I'll kind of build it up, and I can tell you that generally you're going to land somewhere in that 40 to 50% range. Seems to be kind of like the sweet spot for this. And now if you take a look, that's before, that's after. We don't want to erase all signs of texture from her face like we have here. We still want some signs of that. We just want to smooth things out. We just want to kind of reduce the effect a little bit. And you can see before and then after. So that's, I think bringing it down to 0 helps, at least for me, because now I totally get rid of the effect. and then you start to bring it back up because your eyes do get accustomed to things. Well, and you were talking about that.
You get tunnel vision. You start working on it, and you're going, yeah, that looks pretty good because you're focused on it. And sometimes you have to actually step back or take the effect off because you don't see how big a difference it is before and after. That's why you always need to go in and click the preview or bring it down to 0. And a lot of times it's like focusing a telescope or binoculars. You need to take it and you need to swing it back and forth until it seems like, and your eye will know. That's the amazing thing about your eye. Most of the time, once you start looking at this, your eye will go, okay, that's close, that's it, that's a little too much, that's it, oh, and it'll start wiggling and you go, that's the spot I needed it.
A telescope analogy is good too because whenever I manually focus in camera, I always focus too far each way. And that's how I dial it in. I'll go too far one way, too far another way, and that's how I kind of get into that point where I know something's in focus if I'm doing it manually.
Well, and another tip I'd add to that is make sure if there are some bigger blemishes and stuff, if you're smoothing to get rid of those, you're going to over smooth it. You're going to want to go in if there are any major areas and lower those down with the healing brush or something like that so that you're not smoothing the entire skin, which may be pretty good to get to that level so that disappears. Sometimes you think, oh, just apply the Gaussian blur. You might have to make some quick adjustments before you do the Gaussian blur. Otherwise, you're trying to adjust for that big spot over there instead of the full skin.
That's just texture. If you do have blemishes or anything like that, I would, I'm with Pete. Remove that stuff first and then go apply your blur after. And I'll show you one last little thing I do is if a lot of times I'll press the letter F a couple of times and I get into full screen mode in Photoshop and I'll walk away.
Yep.
Sometimes I'll go, if it's at night, I'll go to bed. If it's at lunchtime, I'll walk away. And then when I come back to my computer, I sit down and I look at it and it's kind of the first thing that I see. And you can kind of, how does it hit you? Or you're like, oh, that looks good. Or you're like, ooh, God, what did I do there,
Well, and sometimes, we used to do this in art school. We'd take, and it would be a little harder with the computer, but you could do it, is flip it upside down or look at it in a mirror because your eyes get used to seeing it a certain way. So if you could take it and see it at a different angle, you'll actually notice the changes a little more easily. Because we do get
Pete,
used to
actually, look at that. This is perfect.
I like it that way.
Yes. So I'm gonna flip my images of my portraits upside down and
I'm gonna cut you.
I will cut you. All right. Anyway, so you had a follow up to that because we'll call number 1 the smoothing thing, but there's a little follow up with the eyes that we kind of talked about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the thing is, let's get rid of that. Let's go over here. The thing is, along with the skin, the next thing that you're going to run into an awful lot with portraits, especially girls, is you want to make sure they have those bright eyes. And this is the other thing. We get into the freaky eye syndrome here. And if you look right now, she's got beautiful white teeth and neon eyes there. And that's what happens is that it definitely goes creepy. That's before, and that's after. She's got Betty Davis eyes. Every now and then I get a love. So anyway, once again, we're dealing with the whole idea of it's the right idea, the right way to go. We've just done it too much.
Tone it back a little bit.
And so now if I start bringing it back down, what tends to happen with the eyes is because we want everybody to go, ooh, let's look at the eyes. The eyes are the thing that goes on there. You tend to make it a little too bright. So whatever you think is pretty good, I usually say take it back a little more than you think. Because you're getting used to seeing it bright. Even though I've got it down to 23, look at the difference in just how our eyes pop when you're going back and forth.
I always bring the eyes down more than I think I should.
Because
I'll look at what looks good and I'll be like, let me take it down another 10 or 15%.
Because we've learned over time, we've done it enough that we tend to give it a little too much, so we know where we make the mistake and we drop it down a little lower. And I basically did the exact same thing he did with the skin, except for all I did was make a duplicate of the layer, Command or Control J, and I just simply changed it to screen mode.
Which brightens everything.
Brighten everything up. And now if I hold my Alt or Option button, I come down here and make a layer mask that hides everything, and I'm just gonna paint back in just over the eyes, and I would do a quick job of that. Do I have it on the, yep. I just don't have any paint coming up there. I do a quick paint over the eyes. Let's try that again. Oh, good.
Oh, yeah, your Photoshop.
Yep,
you
Photoshop.
Got that Photoshop
I got this go. There we go. Now, let's see. So we start painting over the eyes, and you can see it. And I would definitely zoom in and make sure to come back and forth. Oh, that looks nice there. Change it, and I could get back in there and make sure that the eye looks really good. And then once again, just like before with the skin, now I've got control on that layer that I can lower the opacity and get it to the level I want. And it's not going to look so garish. Yeah. So many portraits you see popping out from people that are just starting out to play with this retouching and stuff, those eyes are just going like this. And so if you can just take it back.
So your takeaway from this is reduce the opacity of whatever layer you're doing your retouching on, and then reduce it another 15%. Whatever you think you should reduce it another 15%. And that usually lands you in a pretty good spot for it. Same thing goes with teeth. If you're going to brighten somebody's teeth, take them down. They don't need to be glowing.
And those are the three that catch people so many times.
Yeah, teeth, eyes, and skin. Skin is probably the worst offender. Eyes is a very close second, though.
Yep.
All right. So, Pete.
Yep.
Another one that we run into a lot, and this was actually, I think this was the case of the person that had written me a message about it, was sharpening. Okay, because we've got to sharpen just about every single one of our photos, and that's when my example I pulled up, I was like, whoa, that's way too much. And so I guess what their question was is they didn't know how much is too much. How do you look at something and say that's too sharp?
Well, and this is the thing, is there are multiple factors that come into play with that. First of all, what are you displaying it on is going to determine, the level of sharpness and how it's going to show up. If it's small on a screen, it's going to be able to handle more sharpness than if it's blown up real big. Because if you got something small, it's not going to notice as much. But also, you've got to determine when you start out, are you shooting JPEG or RAW? JPEG has already put in some sharpening, usually for the most part, depending on your setting, where RAW is just taking and giving you the raw data. And so you're going to need to apply some sharpening. So if you took a JPEG and a RAW from the same picture, you would probably not add as much sharpening to the RAW as you would JPEG. So there are definitely factors that go on with each one of those.
Yeah. So what does too sharp look like?
Well, what normally happens is, and we have the term, I'm going to take this picture here, and what I want is, I want focus on the couple here. That happens to be my sister. Yes. Hey, Shelly, how's it going? I'm going to bring, and I want to focus on them, and so I'm going to punch up. I always go to clarity first because I love how it gives you some good crispness there, but then I'm going to go over to the sharpening and start cranking it up. Now, we should say whether you're working in Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom, what's the difference?
Same thing.
It's the exact same thing. So
and too sharp, and it could be unsharp mask in Photoshop. It doesn't matter. Too sharp is too sharp.
And what happens, we talk about, it starts to get too crunchy. And you're really going to, once again, you're looking at a screen here. It might not look too bad. You really got to start getting in here. And you start seeing where you're getting some definite noise. And it's starting to feel like it's
crunchy.
Crunchy is the easiest way to say it. And so you're going to want to add sharpness, but the problem is you don't want to apply it everywhere. Let's look over here at these buildings, and we start getting funky things with the clouds. We get halos going around the buildings. And so what you're going to have to do is decide what's too much is, well, what are you looking for? Sometimes if you're going to print it, when you print it on paper, some of that crunchiness smooths out. And so you can actually apply a little more sharpening if you're specifically going to print it. As a matter of fact, we tend to go the opposite of the eyes and the teeth. We take it to the point where we think it's getting a little too crunchy and maybe turn it up just a notch or two to print. Whereas if we're going to be working on screen and we know people are going to see it exactly how we see it, we're going to bring down the sharpness just a little. So it gives a good detail, but we're not making it crunchy where people go, wow, he nuked that one.
Yeah, and it does add a little bit of uncertainty to the situation if you are printing, because what Pete said is absolutely true. When you sharpen, you almost have to sharpen. If for print, you almost have to sharpen right on the edge of what you think looks too much.
Yep. Like when you're starting to get worried about it.
Yeah.
That's right.
You're
in
looking
that
at it
gray
on
area.
screen, you're like, oh God, that starts to look sharpened. It looks like I sharpened it in Photoshop. For print, a lot of times that'll do really good. But for screen, which somebody's going to see it pixel for pixel exactly the same way you see it on your computer, it is going to be too much.
Well, and the only way you're going to figure that out is by doing it and experimenting with it. You're going to have to, in essence, bite the bullet, and if you're going to print with MPix or somebody like that, send a couple test prints in to see how they do. We talked about that today, of taking and doing one right where we think the sharpness is, one over sharp and one under sharp, and maybe have them all on one piece of paper. Send that to MPix, have them print it. When you get it back, go, oh, look, this is the one I like, and I'm surprised how this one turned out.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to send them a bunch of 16 by 20s. No. I mean, you can send a smaller photo, or you can send a 16 by 20 and do what Pete said. You know, in Photoshop, just come over here and create yourself a 16 by 20 document. You know, 16 inches by 20 inches. Create yourself a 16 by 20 document, and then go lay 3 different versions of the photo on there. Send that over to MPix, have them print it out. You get it back, and that way you'll kind of know which one tends to feel right for you.
And I would keep notes and say, this is how I process this one, this is how I process that one, and this is how I process that one. And I would do it real world situation. If you are a photographer, let's say you're a wedding photographer, or a kid photographer, and you're shooting soccer games, and you're going to be giving the kids all 8 by 10s, and you're not going to be printing large, well, you need to run test prints on 8 by 10s. Make all your tests, do your sharpening set for a picture you would do for your soccer player, and then do it with 3 different levels of sharpening. Send that in and see how it comes back, and then you'll know that's the sweet spot that I need to do my sharpening at.
I was going to throw one thing out there to everybody that's watching, which is, you know, if you've got Twitter, you've got your hashtags of whatever, there's the live blog here. Send in some things of where you find yourself having, well, like we have our 5 things, but I'm curious to see, like, does anybody out there have that thing that holds them up? You know, they hear people saying, oh yeah, do this, and when this is right, you're done. And do they ever wonder, like, how do you know when that's right? You know, how do you know what point? But I've got a photo open here.
Oh, but sorry,
go ahead.
I hate to interrupt.
Sorry.
Coming back to the sharpening.
Oh yeah, sorry, we're supposed to continue that.
Yeah, this is the whole thing, that you've got a couple options here dealing with sharpness. So many times we want to take that quick shot and apply something to the whole picture. Whereas what I would do with this is, if I hit Control and, my Option, and hit Reset on this, what I'm normally going to do to a picture like this is, I don't want to get the background and these things, especially trees and skylines and buildings tend to get crunchy. They tend to get noisy and stuff like that. I want to apply specifically to them and give them a little boost. I would come up and grab my adjustment brush in Camera Raw, or the same thing in Lightroom, and I would apply these things specifically right over here. I'd crank up the exposure, the clarity, and what I tend to do on these, same as before, is I do them a little higher than I think, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start applying that to this picture, and I'm just going to do it in the areas where they are. Now the great thing is, because it's an adjustment brush, is once I get all this painted up, and I would obviously be a little more precise working on this for a client or whatever, is now that I've got it in here, I can take and I can adjust and make this brighter, or I can bring it down, and I can use my sharpness and my clarity on a slider to get the way I think it should look. And that's how I apply sharpness most of the time, instead of this grand sweeping thing over all of it.
Like you said, who cares about, we don't want the trees in the background sharp. We don't, you know, they're like, we have lenses that purposely blur those things out. So the last thing that we want is to make them sharp again. So you're doing exactly the same way that I would, which is just use a brush. And if you're inside of Photoshop, it'd be just as easily as, you know, going over to duplicate the layer like we did, same thing with the portrait. Duplicate the layer, filter, sharpen, unsharp mask, you apply it to the photo, and then you use your masking.
Right.
And so here, if you want to see what too sharp is, if you open up a photo that looks like that, and when you're done sharpening, it looks like that, that's too sharp. You've gone too far.
Well, and the monitor may not show this, but it's got, it's starting to get nice halos.
You see that? That's too far. That when you see those little halos, when you see glow around your edges, you know that you've sharpened it too much, okay? When your texture, take a look at some of the textures on there. When they start to get really bright, you notice there was no white edge right there, But after I sharpen it, there is. So when you start to see that stuff, that's too sharp. What Pete showed you before, texture. When you see noise and you see grain over something, that's too sharp.
And usually what happens is when two different textures or lines are coming together, they start to crash into each other and create that extra something to it. On the sideline, when I was talking about in Camera Raw or Lightroom, this little caveat, I'll often add a new one, and I'll go the opposite way to mimic the effect of a fast lens. Is I'll drop down the clarity and the sharpness if I want to dull down some of these areas down here.
Because it blurs.
Because it basically blurs it out. And so that's just a little caveat there, is that you can use those tools to sharpen and blur at the same time and give you a lot more control.
Now, Pete, the image that I have open on screen here, would you worry about over-sharpening this photo?
No, that's another thing that we need to think of, is depending on what the picture is and the feeling of it is going to be determining how much sharpness you can do.
Yeah.
A wedding portrait is not going to be able to withstand as much sharpening as a picture like this grungy.
Yeah, and I wouldn't go this high with it. I've, of course, pulled down my radius. Usually 1.4 or 1.5 is a pretty good radius, and then the amount slider here. But this isn't a photo where you've got to take your brush and you've got to go in and selectively sharpen it. You can, I mean, look at this. I'm up at 330%. That's before. That's after. Honestly, I don't think the after is even that too over sharp. I mean, you could get away with a lot of sharpening in something like this versus what you were doing, and that's where it's hard to give that permanent answer. Like, use 100% and this and this and this, because look at how different. 300% on that photo would have looked ridiculous on your photo, but 300% on this one looks fine.
Well, and also we got to take into account the different engines, the different, CS6 is going to handle noise and sharpness a lot better than CS2 or CS3. So there isn't this, we can give you one answer. It's going to come down to what's going on in the picture.
All right, so Glenn Dewis actually put in a good comment, which was, if you ever find yourself sitting there thinking, what should I do next to this picture? Step away from the screen and take some time out. And that's a very, very, very good advice.
Yeah, because we tend to want to try to, we look at every picture like this is the picture. And we keep trying to figure out how we can push it farther and farther and make it that, opus picture that we have. And sometimes we just got to step back and go, okay, I'm done.
Stop. You can be done. Yeah. All right. You know what I didn't mention, Pete, is I figured we'll probably get through this before 5 o'clock. We might not, but I wanted to prepare the audience for something. We've never done it before. Intimate moments with Pete Collins.
Wow.
So prepare your intimate questions for Pete Collins, because those, it can be intimate moments with either of us. But we haven't done that well. We used to do just ask us any question you want. It doesn't have to be about anything here. But meanwhile, I think we'll have some time at the end.
Meanwhile, Brad is putting up random things like, how about critiquing each other's pictures? That would be fun.
Yes, let's do that.
And then we won't speak to each other for a while.
All right. What do we got next here? So we did sharpening, we did skin smoothing, retouching. Ooh, levels.
Levels. Ooh, so you gave it away. You should have snuck up on it.
Okay. Dull photos. Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better.
All right. So here is the we see this a lot on the grid whenever we do our blind photo critiques.
When I'm sitting there watching y'all, most of the time you go, ooh, if they had just boost this up a little bit, that would have made a lot better shot. Now, sometimes if you're looking for that Instagram look or something like that, flat is going to kind of fit with it. But a lot of times people aren't trying that, and just a little tweak would give you the boost you need.
Yeah, so let me show you how you can do it here inside of Lightroom, which would be exactly the way you do it inside of Photoshop. And this one tiny little thing will make all the difference in your photos. You should do, every photo should get this, okay? So inside of Lightroom, you're going to see, just look at the photo, right? It's okay. We'll come down here to the whites and the blacks. What I do, you can look at the histogram. I don't even really care about the histogram. What I usually do is I hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt key on PC, and I click on the white slider. Everything turns black, and so I drag it to the right. And when you start to see something appear here, that means you have a white point, okay? So it's going to be that edge around the girl. And then you go over here to the black slider, do the same thing, Option or Alt click on it, drag it to the left. And when you start to see things appear, now you have a black point. I usually push the black point
a little bit more
than I would push the white point. The white point I don't want to go like that. As soon as I start to see something white, I'll usually let go. But the black, I usually, I kind of push a little bit more. But I'm going to press the backslash key in Lightroom, which is going to show me before and after. So just those two tiny sliders, before, after. See the difference? It's kind of like flat, contrast, color boost, and that makes all the difference. Just that tiny change.
Just a little touch.
And we do. I know personally, because we give those photo critiques over and over again, just do a little levels adjustment. What do we mean when we say a levels adjustment? Maybe you're not using Lightroom or Camera Raw, which, by the way, you should. What do we mean by a little levels adjustment? I'll open this one inside of Photoshop, and I'll open up the levels, Command or Control L, and you can do the Option or Alt thing here too. Option or Alt click. But what you want to do is you just want to move the black slider to where your histogram starts, and move the white slider to where you start to see the histogram creeps up. A lot of times you see a little thing there, but it's kind of flat, so you just move it right to where it starts to creep up. Before, after.
Yeah, because usually in the preview you'll see that the black has a little gap before the black starts on the histogram, and you just slide that over so it just gets into the histogram so that you know that you have the blackest black you can have in the picture, and same thing with the white. That's all that histogram is saying, is this is where the white begins, this is where the black begins, and if your picture has your markers outside of that, that means you've got extra space that you're not using. You're not using your blackest blacks or your whitest whites, and you need that.
And so just to kind of help appease, because one of the issues we talked about with sharpening, everything we've done so far, is that's a pretty good formula. Take a photo like this. Should there really be a white point in something like this? Because her sweater wasn't white. Her eyes aren't pure white, and her teeth aren't pure white.
Right.
So when I go into levels, and I hold down my Option or Alt key, I don't see a white point yet, right? Do I really want to drag this until I start to see that? Because what happens, I'm losing all detail in her sweater. I'm forcing her sweater to be white when it wasn't white. And so that's where like, it's that little thing that comes in at the end that says, it's a good guideline, but you can't always do it that way. You have to look back at your photo and say, is there anything that's even white here?
But Matt, we want concrete answers. We want formulas so we can fix
You got a good,
everything.
I think by and large, that little blacks and whites trick is gonna just give your photos that extra.
No, I was being sarcastic because that's so often we think that if we can get that formula, then we can fix all our photos. And the thing is you're going to have to make some decisions that are outside of what we can throw at you.
Yeah.
And just realize that that's a great point, because that sweater is not bright white. And as soon as you clip it, we call it clipping. As soon as you get it too bright, it turns white and you lose all detail in there. You don't want to do that with a bride's dress, or she will not be happy.
Okay. Next one, color.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to you on this one for an obvious reason.
You're colorblind?
I am colorblind.
Pete's color. Did I know that about you?
You knew that I was colorblind. You just don't remember, and you just don't care.
I knew that you only have one finger, but
yeah, that's because that's the only one I show you.
I knew that you only have one right hand, but I didn't know that. But I'm not sure I knew that about the color thing. Huh? I'm gonna have to play some tricks on Pete here. All right. So color is another one of those things. This is probably one of the hardest, I think, for people to overcome, because, and especially if you're colorblind, because you'll see somebody that will look at a photo and say, "Oh, that's too red," and you'll look at it and you'll be like, "Where are you getting that from?" So here's I think something that can help you, and I'm gonna show you two ways here. I'm gonna go File, Open. I'm gonna open this up inside of Camera Raw as well. So and remember, Camera Raw is the same thing as Lightroom, so everything that you're doing inside here works exactly the same. I've got to close it first. Open Color. There we go. Okay, so this works exactly the same in Lightroom. The best way to start to work with color is to think about what inside of the photo should be like white or gray. Hopefully not like a pure white, but if it's a fairly close to white or a gray color, that gives you a good indication. When you're in Camera Raw or Lightroom, you can go and you can grab that little eyedropper slider. You're gonna see it right up here in the top. Okay, the white balance tool. And then what I do, you can hover over a part of your photo. And so just look up here, see it says RGB? Okay, so one of the things you can see that there's a problem right here because this is a white bowl.
Right.
Okay, so it should by nature, it should not have any color, right? So if my RGB values are different from each other, it's not a neutral color, right? Take a look. Look at see red 193, green 186. So those are pretty close. But look at the blue, 216. So we can look at this and we automatically know this is too blue. Okay. Now, how do you fix that though? Because you can look at it and say, okay, the blue's too high. All you do is just click on something that should be gray. See what it did? It took my temperature slider, which was over here, and it moved it over here. And it even added a little bit of green to it too. So here's a preview. Before, after. Now when you see it that way, like look at the before, look how blue, was that an orange? Is that orange peel
grapefruit.
Or grapefruit? Look how blue the grapefruit is. Look how blue the blueberries are. Look how blue, look at the raspberries look frozen, right? They do. Pete, I'm asking Pete.
The schnozberries taste like schnozberries. I beat you, Brad.
But if you look at it, the raspberries look frozen. You know, they have a bluish color tint to them. This is the after. Everything gets warmer.
Well, and I think that is such a big thing to remind people of is, once again, our eye gets used to seeing something. And so we need to have that where we can compare to see the difference too. Because when we looked at that at first, we were like, oh, that looks pretty good. We had no idea that it was really too blue until we did some things to test it.
But I promise you, a food photographer would look at that immediately and say, "Oh my God, it's blue. It's cold. It's what's going on here." You know, it just depends where you are, and that's why when you sit back and you're like, well, "How does that person know that?" It's just because they've done it a lot. They've seen it a lot. They kind of know. They know the situation's not.
And yes, it does help to have a calibrated monitor to do this because that's a huge point. If you're not seeing it clearly, you're not going to be able to make some changes. The good news is because he's doing that in Photoshop, the computer is reading the information off of the image, and it's not as much a monitor thing as it's going, hey, that point right there is.
Yeah. In this example here, if I reset this, and remember, look at our RGB values. And they're not going to show up. If you look at your RGB values, this isn't a monitor thing. That blue is way too high. You know you're neutral when red, green, and blue all equal each other. When they're all the same number or pretty close, they don't have to be the same. You know you're neutral. Okay. Now that brings up a good point though.
Do you want it?
Do you want it neutral? Because you'll see a lot of times people will have this isn't. You'll have one perfect example before the show. The video people put up a gray card or a white card right up in front of the screen here, and they white balance off of that. You'll see photographers will have somebody hold up a gray card, and they white balance off of that. Now, does it make it right? Because that's the thing about white balance. It is a creative decision. So we can give you that formula, but let's say you take a photo like this, where we went in here, kind of crank that up a little bit, crank that down a little bit. All right, you take a photo like this. Well, what do I do now? There really is there's no gray point. You know, there's nothing that's like white or gray that I can click on. That's a lot of times where it comes in, it's creative. You know, do you want a sterile? You know, it looks like it was a cold day and it has a very cold, cloudy feeling to it, or do you want something warm?
Well, and we even make those decisions when we're taking the picture, setting our white balance. A lot of times photographers, especially portrait photographers, will switch their white balance so that it's a little warmer because the skin tones look a little better warmer. That doesn't mean it's dead on accurate, but that's how you want to represent it. But knowing where to start and how to get it to that point where it's clear and it doesn't have a color balance, then you can take it whatever direction you want to go. And so that's a great way to make sure that you're dealing with the color, and you can be colorblind and still get the right color.
Yeah, have somebody hold up a gray card a lot too. That'll help out. Okay, where are we, Pete?
You threw away the paper. I don't know.
Sorry, it's right here.
Somebody asked, Ed Law asked, can we do the same histogram moves in Lightroom?
You kind of can. If you look up here, you can move the histogram left and right. It's a little bit harder if I'm in Lightroom. Really, the way I would do it, Option or Alt click there. Option or Alt click there is really the easiest way to do it. You can click over here and move your histogram, but to me,
it's a little clunkier. It doesn't get that precision that you can get as much with the sliders.
Yeah, because you won't see. You don't when you move the histogram this way. Well, actually, here's a tip I didn't know. If you hold down the Option or Alt key and you click up here in the histogram, you will see the screen turn black, just like I did when I clicked down on the slider here. So sure, if you look, see what I'm doing up here? I'm just clicking on the right side here, and it's just moving the white slider for me. So it's the same thing as if I clicked down here.
Now, does it feel like you're doing a larger move? Or does it feel
about the same? It does. No, it does. It feels clunkier when I do it up here.
Difference between pushing a VW Bug and a moving van?
Exactly.
There you go.
All right, the last one. This is a good one.
This is where you...
Black clouds. We see black clouds a lot, don't we, Pete? So...
Well, and this is the thing that is so tough because we love to see drama. We love to see landscapes that are epic. And we want that contrast. And it's like, boom, boom, boom. We want to see Elmer Fudd with his helmet on, kill the rabbit. Yeah. But in reality, most of the time, you're not going to get these ominous black clouds.
Kill the rabbit. All right. So if you take a look on screen here, this is an example of black clouds. This was sunrise, and while there might be times where clouds might be black, this generally isn't one of those times of day when you're going to have black clouds. So where do those black clouds come from? Because we see them all the time, photo after photo after photo. They come from overuse of the clarity slider inside of Lightroom or Camera Raw, and they come from
HDR. That dreaded HDR.
Yeah. So I'm here inside of Lightroom, and you can look. See, you got the clarity slider. I just cranked it up. If you bring it down, see the difference? So clarity makes your clouds black. Now, what happens if you like the clarity setting everywhere else? I kind of like the clarity on the rocks. I like a little bit of clarity inside of the trees over here, and maybe even in some of these clouds over here. Well, you would do what Pete did. You go over to your adjustment brush, double click the word effect, which sets everything to 0, by the way. And then you come over here and just increase your clarity slider, and then you make your brush a little bit smaller and just paint. And you just paint it on the things that you want to draw a little more attention to. It's almost like sharpening. It adds a little bit of detail, and I might even come up here and paint it onto some of these clouds, which I think is probably even too much. Yeah, see, it even makes that black. So you got to be careful with it. But you can paint it in the trees here, and I don't paint it over here because I don't want black clouds.
Well, and the great thing about this is, once again, we're always trying to figure out those ways that are non-destructive or that we can change it. Let's say it's late, we're working on a project or something like that. We use that, and then we go to bed, and the next morning we wake up and go, oh no, I have black clouds. Well, the great thing is, because it's in Lightroom, we've done it with the adjustment brush tool. We go back in, we can re-click on it, and we can erase those areas or change them, and we haven't done any major damage to the picture. If we're doing it in Photoshop, we create a new layer, do it on that layer, and that way we can always mask out areas or lower the opacity.
I actually have an example too.
Okay.
So the clarity slider is one of the guilty ones. So clarity. So even if you're thinking, hey, I never do HDR, I'm not an HDR person.
Yeah, clarity will get you.
You can still overdo it with the clarity slider. So clarity slider gets a lot of people. HDR gets a lot of people. So here's an example of a photo that I ran through. I think I ran through Photomatics. Okay. We see, how many times do we see this?
Yep.
I saw this. I've been at a few print competitions. I haven't entered, but I've been around a couple of print competitions in the last 6 months. So I'm not going to say at which one, but I saw this, the same overdone, glowy. Look at the glow around the barn. Look at the clouds up here. I saw this in the images that were submitted into the print competition. I mean, just a lot of it, just overdone HDR. So you get these glows, you get these really dark clouds, you get this really weird look to it. So one of the things that you can do is what Pete said, is I have the HDR photo, okay? But below that, I opened up an original copy of one of the images that I used to create the HDR. Why do we like HDR? I think we like HDR for the surreal. You know, look at what it does to detail. It makes something look larger than life. You know, with movies the way they are now, everything always looks HDR. So when we see a photo that looks like this, it doesn't look like what we're used to seeing a lot.
Right,
So,
we want more.
so somebody would look at this and like, wow, look at the barn. Look at up front. Everything looks so detailed and everything. So what you do is you bring them together in Photoshop, and then you use a layer mask. And all I did was use a layer mask and just start, and I didn't do a very good job because I didn't zoom into the edges here, but you use your layer mask and you just start painting everything back in. Here, let me fill it with black and I'll show you. Paint with white. And now I just paint the HDR into the barn. But I don't have to paint it up here, and I don't paint it around the edges. You'd zoom in on your edges, and you'd get close, but you'd never go over because that's one of the bad things about HDR.
Maybe give a little soft edge to it, right? But
and then at the end, reduce the opacity.
And one of the detractors, people say HDRs, look at the halos, look at all that, look at the clouds. Well, you've got the ability, because you've got Photoshop, to get the effects you want without taking away from it not having those funky things in there.
Yeah. And then even if you don't do HDR, everybody loves their plugins. So here's an example. This is HDR toning. So even if you didn't do a full HDR, this is the HDR toning inside of Photoshop. Again, bad halos. So what would you do? Duplicate the layer, apply it to that duplicate layer, add the layer mask, and just paint it in. And then this is Nik Color Effects Pro. So again, you know, you start to get these black, dark patches in the sky. Put it on a duplicate layer, add a layer mask, and then just paint it out of all the parts of the photo you don't want it on, because I think it does look cool. If you look at it, I think it looks cool. I think it helps the foreground.
It definitely does.
And I would reduce the opacity, of course, because I think that was too much. But I think it helps the foreground. You know, it gives us that extra detail, but you just have to know, how to go that one extra step and paint it away from the parts of the photo where it looks bad.
Well, and also, I can hear people in the audience now going, but what I like some of how the cloud was doing or whatever. Remember, Photoshop has layers. You could do 30% of the effect here and 60% there, and build it up so that you get the look you want. You are the artist. Yep. You just want to make sure that it works the way you want it to. And so often we get locked into doing one process, and we like how it really does one area, and we forget that it's affecting another area badly. Well, the good news is we can fix that.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a very quick break. When we come back from that break, I want to give you what the advice that I gave to this person was on how they can go further, aside from learning the little ins and outs of the techniques, how they can take this a little bit further. And if anybody sends in intimate questions for Pete Collins, we'll get to those as well. We'll see you back here in just about a minute.
For me, it's hard to work with colors. It's for me hard to imagine to create my black and white images without using the Silver Effects Pro tool. These tools are very important to me, simple as that.
Hey folks, Moose here. A little birdie told me you want to learn wildlife photography. We're going to talk about everything from the basics. How do you find critters? What brings them in? I'm going to cram in more biology in this program than you could probably imagine, because when you take that biology and combine it with that technology, the camera stuff, you come back with great images. what works for background, what works for exposure. The incredible, most important secret, the perch. We're going to talk about camera settings, we're going to talk about flash settings, we're going to talk about camera placement, we're going to talk about short lenses, long lenses. I'm going to help you incorporate it to wherever you live, be it in the middle of an island, in the mountains, the desert. Yep, I'm going to invite you to come to my home, my office, spend some time, learn some of my friends and neighbors how to take the best portrait of them possible. This is an exclusive you're going to see only on KELBY Training, so come along into the great jungle of my backyard.
Hey everybody, back on the grid with Pete Collins. All right, Pete, question came in, boxers or briefs?
I don't believe that was a real question. I think you just made that up.
So neither is the answer.
Boxer briefs. Oh, wait, am I answering just today? I'm not wearing pants at all today.
Oh, you don't, yes. Oh, you are, because I wouldn't be sitting next to you if you weren't. Get away. All right. Dude, I will cut you.
Nope.
All right, Nancy. Contest.
Sorry. I actually had a question, so I was just answering it. Okay, contest time?
Mm-hmm.
All right, today we are giving away a copy of Nikon Capture NX2, which Pete has over there.
There's Pete with NX2.
It's a heavy box.
And what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing we did last week. So I'm putting up a link right now on the live blog. Ta-da! And you are going to go to kelbytv.com/contest and fill out the form, mention the show, tell us what you liked about the show, tell us something you learned, put your shipping information in there, and we will draw a winner on Monday. So some people that are watching
Did you say put your what in there?
Excuse me?
What did you say? Put your what in?
Your shipping information.
Oh.
What did you say?
I thought you said put your ship and information in there, but I didn't think she said ship.
No.
So you're going to have to work with.
Am I blushing?
Wow.
We're going to draw a winner on Monday, so the people that watch the rerun have a chance to win as well.
Cool.
That's it.
All right. So back to our
Before we
topic.
get embarrassed about me, we've also got to mention Joe's class.
Oh, yeah.
That y'all have seen the great advertisement about photographing in tough weather and stuff. It's up now. So make sure you go check it out over at KELBY Media.
Yeah.
It's a great class.
Shooting in bad weather, crappy weather, whatever the actual name of the class is, but it's basically shooting in bad weather. So, mini story, so people know like how stuff like this happens. Joe came down here to film a class called shooting in harsh light. I mean, that's why he came down. It was a class that he came down to do, and he came down to do it in 4 rainy days. 4
Tropical
days.
storm came.
Yeah, 4 days where it just didn't do anything but rain. And so Joe, being the guy he is, just kind of shifted gears, and he was out there and he was doing the class, and he realized, I got to make pictures. I got to make good pictures. So he just started shooting, and after a little while of this, they kind of morphed and changed it into shooting in bad weather, and it's a great class.
It is
really
a great
cool.
class.
So
Joe
it ended up being a really good idea that we just never thought of right off the bat.
And Joe's that magical unicorn that seems to make everything work out.
All right, so to finish the topic up of these 5 things, and what the person who sent me the email said, how do you figure this stuff out? What I ended my response back to them with was, part of the way that I figured this stuff out, and I'm going to guess you're similar, is I had people look at my work. I had people constantly look at my work. I'd constantly ask people, how is this? And what happens is, and this is way back in the beginning, somebody would say, no, it looks good, but you think you sharpened it too much? And I'd be like, what do you mean? And they said, well, kind of, you could see some halos around there. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, I should pull back on that, And then you look at, hey, that looks great, but the skin is pretty smooth. You might want to pull back on that a little bit. The eyes are too bright. The teeth are too bright. And I had people look at my stuff a lot. And it's hard. What I would not say, what I suggested to this person, whether it's online or in person, if you know somebody in your community, where you live, or whether it's online where you've developed relationships with people in social media, is get a group of people that you trust and ask them. If it's Google Plus, make a circle of like critiquers and share it with them. If it's on Facebook, just send it to certain people. If you know people, whenever you're around them, hey, would you take a look at a couple photos here? Let me look. Don't just put it out there and say, what do you think? Because you know what people are going to say?
We love it.
Everything. Or we love it, or they'll find something wrong.
Well, and I think that is so important that you have a group of people that you trust. And the trust isn't just that they care about you and want to make you feel good, but you appreciate their eye. Mm-hmm. They've showed over time that they have a good eye for photography or whatever, and that they're willing to tell you what they think. Because sometimes you'll get somebody in there that just doesn't want to hurt your feelings, or they're the opposite. Problem we have most of the time is we have to cut through the sarcasm. We show one of each other our pictures around here. Man, did you sharpen that enough?
Oh,
you never know whether or not they're being honest or not.
Dude, you're right. You're right. I never...
We've stopped asking each other advice about our pictures because we never know whether they're being snarky or they're being truthful with us. The goal is to see who can get the other one to be in the fetal position
to
under
cry
the desk.
faster. Yeah.
And so you've got to have those people that you trust what they're saying, but also trust that they have an eye to tell you that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I, people will say this quite a bit because we do the critiques on the grid, and they say, somebody will say, hey, how come you don't put your photos out there to be critiqued? I do. I just don't put it out there to the general public.
Right.
Because I want to put it out there to people that I know. People that I know want to see me succeed, and people that I know are going to give me feedback that'll help me. So I do have a group of people that I send my stuff to, and that I know will send back and say, hey, you should fix that, or get that one out of the portfolio, or that, that's nice, but that's not going to make it.
Well, and the blind critique is, in a sense, that you're trusting that we've seen enough pictures, and we do really care that we want to help you develop, that we're going to tell you something that's going to help your photography. We're not just out here to blow smoke up your skirt or whatever, but we're going to tell you what's really going on.
I'm not wearing a skirt, Pete. You may be, because
you were earlier.
We know what you wear is questionable, but I was earlier. Anyway, so somebody asked a question. Hey, Pete, what form of color blindness do you have? It can be shown to others by using LAB mode in Photoshop so that Matt can see what you see.
Nobody.
Which, by the way, I don't care to see what Pete sees.
Nobody can see what I can see.
No, you don't want to.
GMK Wayne, if you know me anytime at all, you'll know that I can't even remember half the stuff that's going on. So I'm sure at one point in time they told me what color blindness I had. It's red, green, but I mess up all kinds of different stuff. I don't know the exact term, so I couldn't even find the right setting in Photoshop to show them.
So how do you color correct?
Well, see, the thing is, I actually went to art school.
Is that why you have a lot of black and whites?
I love black and white. That's part of it. But the same thing with Joel Grimes. You notice he's developed his own style because he's colorblind, and he was worried he was going to oversaturate stuff.
So he's got a very desaturated style.
Yeah, and that's turned out to be something that's really good on his. And I'm always worried. Red and green give me a lot of trouble, and a lot of times green especially. But even I went to art school. I was a painter and all that good stuff. And it comes down to learning. I was a visual merchandiser for Steinmart. I dressed mannequins and did all that. You have to develop an understanding of where you have the pitfalls in being able to see color.
That's interesting. Because you have a lot of color photos in your office, and I never thought, like, oh, God, Pete, the colors.
Well, every now and again. I also have a wife that catches me a lot of times, and some other people. But Photoshop will allow you to get away with a lot of that because it's got these measurement tools in there that can tell you, is that red, is that green, or is that blue? So it's
cool.
There you go.
I learned something today.
I'm glad I could teach you.
Anyway. All right, guys. So you got your contest link, Capture NX2. That about wraps up our show. Make sure you check out one of our sponsors, which is MPix. Check out their app. You can download it. It's free. Order some photos. Order some prints. You'll be good to go. Pete, thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome. And as we wrap up, I want y'all to send some snarky comments to both Nancy and Brad, because they're over there having these little behind-the-scenes conversations that make us nervous. I don't know about Matt.
You kind of hear like...
So whatever y'all saying in the chats, you've got them doing something wrong, and I want you to call them out. So that's all I got to say.
Nancy?
Oh, look, Nancy, do not give us that innocent eyes. You are evil.
Nancy, thanks for doing that. Nancy thing that you did today.
You're welcome.
That Nancy thing you do. You're the own-eaters.
Can I
Brad,
say?
thank you for being you.
Thanks
You were
for
pretty
doing
useless
absolutely
today.
nothing.
Yeah, so are you shooting a concert tonight?
Yes.
What's your bemorevisuals.com? So if you want to see one kick butt concert photographer, so anybody that wants to get good at shooting concerts, go look at Brad's work.
He's
Take a
got
look at
great
what
links
Brad
to
does.
other guys over there. You can use them as a pipeline.
Be More Visuals. That's Moore visuals.com. So very, very good. Brad has a killer portfolio of concerts. It's all over his wall, and it's pretty cool to see because he changes it out quite often. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks to all the sponsors for helping us out with the show. Until next week, which I think next week will be Blind Critique Week.
Yes.
Until next week, see you soon.
Bye, guys.
This week's episode of The Grid is sponsored by MPix. Shoot today, upload tonight, we ship tomorrow. Manfrotto, imagine more. On One Software that gets you back to shooting. ADORAMA, more than a camera store. Tiffin, helping create the world's greatest images. Peach Pit Press, publishers of technology books, ebooks, and videos for creative people. Epson, exceed your vision. Expo Imaging, Rogue Flash Benders for speedlight enthusiasts. Nik Software, photography first. And B&H Photo, the professional source.